Hey there guys, welcome to a new video series which I'm starting out, where essentially I'll be teaching the tips and tricks that I've learned as a management consultant while working with Tableau. Essentially I'm going to be using a sample data set. This data set is essentially from Forbes. It talks about the 2021 billionaires and it comes from Kaggle. If you're interested in reviewing this data set, I'll put in the link in the description. If you haven't subscribed or liked the channel already, please do so, it means a lot. So just to start out, essentially this particular data set has about 9 categories. We'll start with name, net worth. It's got the country, the source rank, age, residence and citizenship. We'll only focus on about 3 or 4 out of all of these for today's video. And let's start out maybe by just looking at the first one, which is essentially what is the current whether these people are self-made, and let's look at the education. Perhaps we look at maybe the residence, and we'll also look at the net worth. So let's start out with the first one. Let's call this as whether they are self-made or not. So let's increase this font a bit. So I do like my fonts to be about 40. Just makes it look much better. So if I'm putting this as, let's say, 40, okay, maybe that became a bit too big. Let's move this back to 36. So now let's kind of take the self-made column. So what we have are essentially 3 values, which is self-made, null, false, true. If I go back to the data set, I'll have to pick a column from where I can do this. So what I'm going to do is I've created a net worth copy, which is nothing but clicking on net worth. If you click here, you can click on duplicate. So let me delete this. I'm going to use net worth copy 2. Let's rename this as net worth count distinct. Sorry, let's name this as net worth count. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in the rows. And what I'm also going to do is instead of the measure sum, I'm going to use the count value. If I click here, it's about 1877 and 1960. I have checked this previously, so I do know these figures to be right. I don't like the term null, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this, and essentially instead of null, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this as not sure, maybe, or let's call this as not available. Self-made, yes, and then false we can put a self-made no. Let's click on OK. The count is great, but it doesn't really add a lot of value. So what I'm going to do is let's change this to percent of total. So if I were to put that here, and let's put that in the labels. So the labels obviously are still talking back to the sum, so I'm going to change this to count, and then I'm going to change the measure to quick table calculation, and I'm going to make this as the percent of total. So now what this does is it very quickly kind of shows me these values. I think this is a great chart, but I'm just going to try and see if this looks better or the other one looks better. So maybe the former looked better, which is what I'm going to stick to. I'm just going to edit this axis. Instead of percentage of total count of net worth count, let's just call this as percentage split, or let's call this as percentage of self-made versus non-self-made billionaires. I think that looks better. Then let's try and color this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the self-made, I'm going to put in the colors here. Those look damn ugly, so I'm going to change them. Personally, I would like, let's use the McKinsey kind of color scheme. So I'm going to use a blue for this. I'm going to use a light green for the no. For the not overwhelming, I'm going to use a yellow. Hopefully it's a good stark contrast. It doesn't look too ugly. Actually, the last one does look ugly, so I'm going to manually change that. Let's maybe stick to a grayish tone. So I'm gonna go to a gray, and that's probably the first chart that we're going to use. And I'm going to hide field labels for that. Let's put this on a new dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use generic desktop. Let me add a title, Forbes Billionaires Analysis. I'm gonna increase the size to about 20. Maybe that's a bit too small, so let's increase this to 20. Probably make this black. I'm gonna format the dashboard. So what I'm gonna do is let's change the background color maybe to gray. This can probably be a shade of blue, and maybe what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna double click on this. I'm just gonna bold this. Okay, now okay, maybe unbold and just increase the font size there. So once we have this, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in the first sheet that we had, which was essentially the self-made ones. Probably reduce the size here because in comparison to the title it's a bit too much. So self-made, okay, let's rename this self-made versus non-self-made. Billionaires. All right, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this float. Okay, I'm still gonna put that in on full. Probably don't need the whole area, so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna reduce this a bit. So I'm gonna make it floating for now. Let's also make the Forbes Billionaires Analysis also a bit floating. I'm going to increase the size of this a bit. Now that I think about it, if I look at it, I think the white background actually made a lot more sense, so I am going to spend some time formatting. So you'll realize this, that a lot of the time that management consultants do spend is on just making sure that they get the formatting of whatever they're working on right. So as you can see, essentially we've got the Forbes Billionaires Analysis, we've got the self-made versus the non-self-made categories, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a level deeper in terms of analyzing this particular data set. I'm also very quickly just going to add maybe for the rows, I'm just going to add some amount of grid lines, which I think are probably not coming out. So let's try to use this and then pane, let's use this, and then header, let's use this. Okay, all right, I think I'm not using the right one. So let's look at percent of total pane, axis, grid lines, rows. Okay, so there's sys rulers. Let's look at the columns. So it's there, this is there. I think it's showing up, it's just a bit too narrow to not come out there. So once we kind of have this, I think I'm very quickly just going to add one last thing, which is essentially to the outline, I'm just gonna, okay, so let's just do this, and then I think we are good to go after this very trivial formatting, which takes a lot of time. But actually it did look much better without all of that formatting, so I'm just going to go back to the basics. So like I said, like, you know, that will happen quite a lot. So I'm just going to go down to the floating bit. Essentially, let's kind of put this in a row. So we've got essentially the Forbes billionaires analysis, we've got the self-made, whether they were not or were they self-made, and essentially this is this classification that we have out here. Now the other thing is, if you look at this axis, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this axis, and I'm not going to put it as logarithmic. And then what that's going to do is it's very quickly actually going to start showing the difference that we were trying to point out at the start, when we kind of set up this dashboard. Now let's go back to the self-made versus the non-self-made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this sheet very quickly, and then now let's look at let's look at the status of these particular individuals. So I'm going to just replace this with status. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove the self-made columns, and then maybe for this chart, let's switch the rows and columns, and then we start seeing a bit more diversification. What I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to sort these particular values. So I'm going to sort them in descending order, and then I'm going to choose the field, and then if I click on this, essentially we just use the net worth count, it will automatically sort itself. Let's edit the axis. Let's call this as the current relationship status of billionaires. And if we were to click this, and let's rename the sheet. So if I'm going to call this as relationship status of billionaires, what you'll start seeing is that very quickly it's starting to pop up. Now, similar to how we did the previous table, let's kind of change the color, and again let's get rid of the ugly colors. So let's use maybe the Miller stone, not really. Let's use the Nouriel stone. Let's assign the palette. Let's click on apply. Let's see how this looks. Looks okay. I think what I would typically do is I would want some kind of classification or some kind of gradient coloring. There's faster ways to do this. So for instance, you could do something like the lightning bluegrass. Obviously there's less colors here, so you need to choose one which has a lot of those. So maybe let's click on this, and let's just click assign. That works, but as always I am very finicky about colors, so I might change this later. If I were to click on so let's change the aliases again, and if I were to go down here, I'm going to very quickly edit the aliases. Instead of null, let's call this not available. Let's click OK. What we have now is essentially also the relationship statuses. So let's then plot this here. I'm gonna put this as floating very quickly. Let's put this as floating. Let's bring this here. I don't think we need this, we already have those called out. Let's fit this entire view. I don't think we need okay, we can actually keep that, it doesn't really matter. It's actually, let's get rid of that as well. Self-explanatory, unless you're blind. Let's try to keep all our charts as minimal as we can. So what we've got is essentially two charts. So the first one talks about the self-made versus the non-self-made. Then we've got the relationship status of billionaires. Now what I'm going to do is let's add a bit of funkiness and functionality to this particular chart. So what I'm going to do is let's select and show a filter, and then click this. So what we have now is essentially a filter which is for self-made, no, yes, not available. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's keep this as multiple values, but what we're going to do is we're going to apply to worksheets, selected worksheets. Let's apply this to our second worksheet. Now let's unselect all of it. Let's say that you just want to look at all the yeses, and then look at the percentage splits. Now let's select a bit more, so we look at the yes and the no's, and then we essentially look at how these folks are placed. And then let's add in the not availables and then compare how these folks stack up. So if you look at it, actually it's not changing a lot. Like if I were to look at the married folks at 62%, if I remove this and if I just look at the yeses at 64%, so that's about a 2% differential. If I add in the no's, or if I just look at the no's, it goes down a bit, but in actuality it doesn't make that significant of a difference. I think if I were to compare the divorced, let's look at that. So I want to look at people who are not self-made, and divorced is about 7%. People who are self-made and divorced is 4%, and that's an interesting fact and a story to tell a client. So let's just go back to that. Now we've got two of these going for us. Let's unselect okay, perfect. So now let's format this a bit more. Let's add a source, Forbes millionaire list, Kaggle 2022. Okay, let's put this as floating. Let's move this to the bottom. Yep, okay, so we have that as well. Let's also put this, I'm just going to move this a bit to the left so that it's not getting in the way of any of our charts. Alright, so we've got self-made versus non-self-made billionaires. We've got the relationship status of billionaires. Now let's look at a third category. Let's go back to citizenship instead, which probably is easier to do at this point in time. And actually let's make this a map. So let's remove this, let's remove this, let's remove this as well again. So let me remove all of this first. Let's pull the citizenship here. There's one unknown. Let's look at that. So that's a null value, so we don't probably have that in the data set, which is fine. Let's use our net worth count again, and then let's color this. So what we've got is essentially this great thing, but maybe, just maybe, we can use the size filter. So what we've got is citizenship status of billionaires. Now when we're doing the citizenship status of billionaires, essentially, I mean, what I would like to do is, instead of the bubbles, the bubbles, and essentially the color of the bubbles is showing the same thing, but that's okay, I think. Let's go to let's still just stick to that for this particular visual. So higher is of course darker, doesn't look the best. Let's maybe adjust this to probably a lighter tone. Let's click on that, let's click apply. Yep, that looks much better. Let's add a border to these different circles that we're seeing. Let's also change the map. So I'm going to change this to maybe a dark map, which looks a bit funky. I'm going to change the background layers, so maybe wash out the map a bit, so that not that much, maybe just about 15% or a bit lower. I'm going to add a few other things which just makes this look much more funkier. I'm going to add the country borders, country names, and so on. Let's close this. Okay, maybe let's stick to this kind of a map. The previous one works, but it was a bit too dark. It won't go with the overall theme. I'm going to adjust very quickly the size of these two charts that we do have here, and I'm gonna firstly delete sheet 4, then I'm gonna pull the citizenship status, and then I'm gonna make this as floating. So let's make this as fit entire view. Okay, so that let's firstly filter data. Gonna increase this a bit, move this a bit to the top, move this as well a bit to the top. Okay, bring this down. So now we've also got the citizenship status of the billionaires. I'm gonna maybe reduce the size of the bubble so that it looks okay on the map. Don't really need to add this in, probably can add this self-made. So let's put this as floating. And then let's also edit the title, density, or maybe like billionaire citizenship, and then let's just call this low to high. I don't really want to add the count. The count is kind of like it just doesn't add a lot of value, so I'm gonna edit. So let's format legends. Actually, let's just stick to this for now. Move this down a bit, increase the size here a bit. Yep, that looks okay. What I'm going to do is maybe shading. We can add white here, so it bleeds a bit in there, but it doesn't really matter. Let's also use the same thing we did earlier, which is let's apply to worksheets, selected worksheets. Let's apply this also to the citizenship status. And now if we look at this, let's say you just want to look at the no's or you want to look at the yes. So this was 2469. I'm going to remove this. Let's look at the no's. So now it's gone down, so it's only 55. Let's look at the non-availables. Let's look at the yeses. You'll start seeing all of these things are moving in real time as we're kind of like building this Tableau dashboard out. All right, so I think let me just increase this. Let's move this a bit more. Maybe make this 24. Yep, that looks much better. Let's kind of like close the video maybe with, maybe I want to add another filter. So what I'm gonna here is I'm gonna add citizenship filter. I'm gonna make this a multiple value drop down. I'm going to paste this here, just reduce this a bit. Okay, God knows why this is so big. So I'm going to add this in here. Essentially what we're going to do, what we are going to be able to do with this is we'll actually be able to filter by specific countries. So let's say if you just want to look at Australia, you want to look at Austria, you want to look at Canada, Chile, Belgium, Egypt, you can actually start seeing and comparing those. But I'm going to do the reverse. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to apply this to worksheets, which is selected worksheets, and I'm going to select the other two as well. So now what's happening is that if I were to choose Australia, you'll only see the rest of the values for Australia. If I want to see for Belgium, you're only seeing this for Belgium. If you want to see for China, you're seeing it only for China. But you can also start adding multiple countries, multiple cities to this particular visualization, which I feel is very powerful. Let's add in India. So India is a big country, right? So you'll start seeing that the dots are more visible in those cases. All right, so I think those are the three visuals that I wanted to put in. I think let's go back and see what other thing can we quickly use for this particular video. I don't like word clouds, but just for the fun of it, I'm just gonna add a word cloud and see how it plays out. So let me remove all of these 1,000 things that I have added here, which ideally I shouldn't have. Let's take the name of the person. Let's add all members. Let's see how it looks. Let's add their net worth. Let's go to the default and let's search for maybe okay, let's do this. So let's put text here. Maybe I won't do a word cloud, just for the simple reason that it's not going to add a lot of value. But let's try and see if we can. Size. Let's go to the name. So let's see what else can we do, right? So I'm going to take the name. Let's take the net worth, and let's make this as a bar. Let's add in the names. Actually, let's add in the names. Let's see what happens. So that's obviously a lot of names. So now what we're going to do is let's filter these names by, let's sort these names in descending order. Field, net worth. So what you've got is you've essentially got the people by that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to filter the names. Let's do top 10, net worth, sum, apply. Okay, so now I've got only the top 10 folks who are here. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to do another thing, which is essentially I am going to firstly add a color. So let's take the net worth, add the color here. Let's color this, change it to the so now that we have the colors, essentially what this is going to do is it's going to actually be pretty cool when we pull this here. Let's make this as a floating value. Let's pull this here fully. Let's firstly fit the entire view. Now let's pull that here to the bottom. So what we're seeing is essentially the net worth, again low to high. Hey there. So I just had to like reshoot this last bit, but this, you might see that, you know, I've renamed the file to this particular last section out here to the top 10 billionaires. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else which has changed. Just to kind of like tell you where we kind of left it off. Essentially, if we kind of like filter by, you know, different countries, what we'll start doing is we'll start seeing all of the entries coming in together, but we can only see the top 10 for, let's say, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Colombia, and so on. So right now what we're seeing is that, you know, it's kind of happening, but when we actually left it, essentially this filtering was not happening previously. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly tell you how I have actually gone about doing that. So I'm just going to repeat those steps. So just to kind of show you now, you'll start seeing that, you know, we can't filter the top 10. If we use the top 10 filters for any of these categories, then essentially it'll only show the top 10 overall. It won't show it by individual specific countries or filters we've applied. So what I'm going to do is very quickly we'll take the rank of the net worth. So we just need to put like the sum of the net worth, and we just need to put this in descending order so that it ranks that way. Essentially, once we have this, essentially we've got this rank column. I'm going to put this in the filters. We're going to choose the range of values from 1 to 10. We're going to click on apply. We're going to click OK. So now it's showing the top 10 values for all. If we were to very quickly just choose Algeria, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, China, then essentially it will still show only the top 10, and that's how we've kind of like managed to do this. Just to give a bit more context, what we can do is, if you want to add a column here which kind of shows the overall, like not the overall rank but just the specific rank, just to kind of make it easier for the readers, we can just say we can just call it rank string. We will call this as string rank, and then we'll just press enter. We'll click OK, and I'm just going to add the rank string here. We can just rename this field. So let's call the rank string, let's rename it for the purpose of this to just so let's call this rank 1 to 10, right? And then essentially what that then very quickly gives you is that it gives you the overall view of things, right? So now essentially if we look at not available, you still have these 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So I think what's happening now is it's showing the overall rank, it's not showing the rank from 1 to 10. So let's just fix the formula. I think there were 2 ranks that we had there and I've used the wrong one. So I'm going to use the calculation rank. Remove this very quickly, pull the rank 1 to 10, and now it'll start showing you the revised ranks, and then that should work perfectly. And then let's just look at it one more time. So let's say if there's okay, I think we've selected nulls, so that's why let's select all. Let's test this out. So let's select Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, adding a lot of countries. We still see that it's like this. If we select all of them together, we still see the top 10 ranks. If we select, let's go to the bottom. So let's select Turkey, Thailand, Taiwan, Switzerland, Sweden, a few random countries. It's going to take a while to calculate. It calculates it very good. Let's see if this, so the citizenship is working. Let's remove the non-availables. Let's remove the no's. Okay, let's remove the yeses. Let's add the yeses back in. Let's add the not availables in. Let's add the no's in. Okay, so essentially the chart is working perfectly. And if we go into, like, let's say just the overall viewer mode, this is how it looks. You won't see a lot of the other things that were coming up. There's a few other things which we can clean up, which I guess we should clean up. So let's kind of just take a minute to fix those. So if we were to go back to our original sheets, I think let's go to the tooltips. Most of the times I don't like to have anything on the tooltips, so I'm just gonna like very quickly clean this up, primarily because a lot of the stories that we would like to tell, they're quite clear already. So maybe in this one I will just keep the citizenship and the net worth, and then what I'm going to do is, actually I'm just going to keep the citizenship, or like rather citizenship, and then let's just call this citizenship country, and then click OK. Yep, so that works. Top 10 billionaires, again we don't need all of these tooltips, so I'm just going to remove that, and let's do hide all sheets. Say, let's call this the Forbes billionaire dashboard, and I think you have it ready. So there it is, your Forbes billionaire dashboard, which typically is how we will sell this to our clients. And I hope you found this video useful. If there are specific videos you're interested in, or if there's specific things that you would like to pick on, do let me know. If you haven't subscribed or liked the channel, please do. It means a lot and helps me stay motivated to create more of these videos. Until next time, signing off.